In today's episode, you're going to learn 8 tactics a covert narcissist uses to control you and what covert narcissism is so that you can avoid people like this. What makes a covert narcissist so dangerous is that, as the name suggests, their actions are hidden under the surface, so it's very difficult to spot right off the bat because they can come across as shy or introverted and actually quite needy. It's very passive-aggressive in its nature, and they are victimised in their entitlement. Their arrogance is always a criticism of others being beneath them and that they always know better. All narcissists use psychological abuse to control you because they feel threatened by your confidence. So they're always having to find clandestine ways to undermine and dismiss you, to bring you down and start doubting yourself. A covert narcissist is so insecure, so they will use these tactics when you're alone, especially when nobody is looking that can expose them. They're masters of subtle manipulation, so you don't expect that they're controlling because they are not always loud and grandiose. They tend to pretend to be humble, and often they'll overinflate their importance in a very sort of backdoor kind of way. And because they're masters of deceit and often believe their own lies, they have way too many tactics to cover in this one video. But here they are. My top 8 ways that you can expose a covert narcissist when they're trying to control you. Number 1, they will use facial expression and body language rather than outwardly criticize you. And you know when they're doing this because they show disgust or total disdain and that they're displeased, anything to make you feel bad. And if you catch them in a lie and you call them on it, they'll gaslight you just by a look alone. They come across as shy or introverted to avoid deep conversations, to suppress their anger. And they play the poor me game because they don't like themselves deep down. So they can come across very condescending and play superior to others by being painfully sensitive to criticism or being slighted. And it's all personal to them, and their anger and their resentment is always just under the surface. They play the victim role, lamenting on, oh, they are such a good person, and yet they always get the short end of the stick. And it's exhausting with that back and the forth of guilt and fear of their explosive rage and then helplessness to change anything. And you're treading on eggshells because they're so hypersensitive. Number 2 is that they play the underdog. Nothing satisfies them, and they always kind of in that pity party, and they'll throw a negative slant on everything. I would say, oh, it's such a gorgeous day, let's go out for a walk. And they'll say something like, well, it won't last, so why bother? And there's always a counter, especially with things like food. You know, you'll cook a beautiful meal and they'll say, oh, well, it wasn't hot enough. And there's always this constant slew of negativity. And it's you have no idea how much I sacrificed or worked to get this. And if only you knew how many times, and on it goes. My ex would rather sit at home and wait for opportunity to fall in his lap than get a job that was beneath him. And there's always an excuse and a dissatisfaction about how unfair life is. This constant complaining and criticizing and demeaning others who are successful. They're real Danny Downers that bring everybody down to their state of misery. And there's always a valid reason why they won't look for solutions or try something different. And when you try to help them, they can't hear you unless you give them the golden goose. It always ends in an argument, or at least that was my experience of it, to make me feel bad in their full victim mode of blaming and shaming. And why are you picking on me when you're just trying to help? So don't rescue them. You can't. And if you are an empath or a people pleaser, you are vulnerable to becoming a blood donor to these kind of vampires. And if you're the one earning the money, don't feel sorry for them by giving them money and enabling them. If you do, why would they bother to get a job? For as long as you are their supply, they get what they want, and they'll use the guilt card and tell you that, that they've been to interviews, and they'll make every excuse under the sun as to why they aren't working. So to prevent narcissistic abuse early, don't lend them any money. They'll never pay you back, and keep your own bank account. Refuse to put your name on any legal documents with them, no matter how sorry or guilty you feel about saying no. Do not enable their behavior and become codependent on the hope that they're going to get better, or be afraid that, you're going to be alone for the rest of your life, or feel guilty that if you leave them, they won't make it on their own because they're so anxious and depressed, and why kick a horse when it's down? So watch for the crocodile tears and those fake panic attacks, because they will use them. And I learned the hard way when I signed surety for an overdraft for a joint business that years later ended up me losing everything. And it was really painful to realize that I bought into the lie. The narcissist is always going to dangle the carrot with promises of dream vacations or home renovations or success or something that they actually have no intention of delivering. There's always an excuse why they don't do what they say, and they will make you doubt that they ever said it. See the episode on gaslighting for more ways that they make you think that you're the one that's going crazy and is too sensitive. The other way is they use information gathering. They're always poking around, looking for dirt on you that they can use at a later time. And they do this by pretending to be so happy to see someone and that they're really interested in their problems. And then they ghost the person or dismiss them when they've got the information that they want. They never share anything intimate about themselves because they don't want to expose their vulnerability. And the conversations are always very superficial and shallow. My ex used to confront me all the time, and I once came back from a massage with different clothes on, and he accused me of having an affair. He said that I hadn't gone to the massage place because he'd called them and they said that I didn't have an appointment, which was totally untrue. But it left me feeling really confused about where this had come from at the time. And because he made me feel that I had done something wrong, I didn't know what narcissism was back then. So just know that most narcissists will use whatever tactic they have, from grandiose to covert to cerebral superiority and everything in between, to get what they want. Check for spyware on your tracking apps on your phone. They'll also go to the lengths of stalking you physically to intimidate or frighten you into being subservient and to toe the line. They also lack commitment. This is not just true for narcissists that are covert, but you may think that you're in a relationship with them exclusively because not all narcissists cheat. And even at the love bombing stage, they're always on the prowl to find more victims to exploit and control. And I found out what my ex was on a couple of dating sites only when some of my single friends told me that they'd seen his profile there. And when I asked him about it, he acted all surprised and said his business partners must have put his profile up there as a practical joke, which of course was not true. He never took it down either, which, surprise, surprise, he was feeding off the attention that he was getting from all these desperate women. So be aware of that and know that you may stay with an abusive narcissist even though they're spending money on porn or unscrupulous dating sites or other places, because maybe the sex is really good. They can be really good lovers in the bedroom, so don't be fooled. I find that they're all serial cheaters and they're always looking for where they can find their next supply. Look for business trips that require travel overnight. For me, it was the weekends that were a big red flag, and I once found a credit card slip in a hotel in town for what he said was, required for when he was away shooting over that same weekend. They're also really good at secrecy. My ex would never bring any personal information like bank statements into the house. He kept everything locked in his briefcase or at his workplace. And when he came home, he would spend hours in the car, engine running, and he was always on the phone. And he'd never take a call in my presence, and his phone was always locked. He'd be really obsessed with texting when he would be in the same room as me, and he'd get really angry if my daughter or anyone else touched his phone. So if it feels off, don't ignore it. Your gut is never wrong. A covert way to counter any suspicion also is that they'll show your phone and say, well, look, I'm an open book, after they've deleted everything. And I know one of my clients once got an app where she could actually see in real time all the text messages that were going backwards and forwards between him and his lover. And that gave her the proof and the strength that she needed, that she wasn't going crazy and that this really was going on. Character assassinating. The narcissist always starts their smear campaigns and alienates you from your support long before the discard to ensure that they always have a supply handy. By hooking people into their poor me story early on and planting doubt that you are not playing nice and are not the person you are, don't be surprised when your friends and family start avoiding you because he's been busy. And they'll always spread rumors about you on social media by, sharing something personal that you shared with them that makes you look very vulnerable. And they will make you believe that they are the only person who cares for you when you mention how sad you are that so-and-so canceled on you or said something hurtful behind your back and you don't know what you did to offend them. And then step in and be the hero, that really sees you. Another thing they use is competition. This happens in the workplace as much as in personal relationships because they aren't team players and they want all that attention for themselves. So they'll underhandedly sabotage the other's efforts with ongoing contempt or blame you for sleeping your way to the top. And they have such integrity and values and, look at you. And they take pleasure in seeing someone else suffering. And they'll play the OCD card too when they sort of accidentally delete your big presentation or forget to show up to your birthday celebration or your child's recital. They'll create a drama or an emergency to make people feel sorry for them. And then they take the attention off your special day or in an attempt to ruin your happiness. When I went no contact with my ex, I had to get a restraining order because he threatened to hurt my family and my cats. And even though I'd filed for a no contest divorce because there was no assets or children to fight about, he showed up anyway in court just because he could. And he wanted to intimidate me and win. And sadly he did because I had to pay for the court's time with money I never had at the time. And the whole experience was deeply traumatic. It took me a long time before I didn't have a panic attack every time my phone would ring because of the constant bombardment of all the verbal and emotional abuse of ongoing texts. And even though I'd change my number and block his calls, he always found a way around to really get to me. They also never let go of old supply. They always stay friendly with everyone just in case they have a future use for them. And they pretend to be really genuinely interested in what's going on in your life just to see if they can hook you back in. And if you've been on the receiving end of this tactic, it always takes you off guard, doesn't it? It's easy to get sucked back in. So just try not to disclose anything personal that they can use against you and hoover you back in. Remember, they are not able to form emotional bonds with anyone due to their true lack of empathy and inability to attach to others. So there you have it, 8 ways a covert narcissist controls you. You can heal and prevent falling for a false sense of security with a narcissist of any kind, so never forget that. Don't believe a word they say because the narcissist knows how to disarm you and make you doubt your gut reactions. They will never change, so look for the patterns no matter how subtle they may seem. And let me know in the comments if you have fallen prey for any of these tactics and what you're doing to recover from emotional or narcissistic abuse so that your story can inspire and help someone else who may be going through their own version of psychological trauma. And I'll meet you on the next one. If you like this video, please like it, subscribe it, and share it. And above all, trust that you can heal from any form of emotional abuse or narcissistic trauma patterns. With the right support and a way to create safe embodiment, anything is possible.